Welcome to the A2 Show with Andrew Cass and Aaron Parkinson, bringing you the trends and topics that affect our lives the most: business, politics, fitness, family, and finance. With over 50 plus years of combined business experience and over $1 billion in revenue generated, your hosts have a unique gift for seeing many steps ahead where others do not. They bring their unfiltered, contrarian views to the show every week to help you win in business and in life.
Welcome back, everybody, to a special edition of the A2 Show. Kennedy blocked from the 2024 first presidential debate stage. Aaron, we had to do an emergency episode here because this is a big deal, regardless of what side of the fence you're on, because we're seeing something happen that we've never seen happen before. And what scares me most is this is an elimination tactic. And we're running into potentially the most important elections I think I've seen in my lifetime. I'm 50 years old, Aaron. I know you're a couple years younger than me. Even though I look younger than you, I know you're a couple years younger than me. We're doing a show on peak performance and longevity next week, so I had to throw that in there. But it's a scary thing right now because we're seeing anytime there's elimination, Aaron, not competition, I get really, really scared because now we're tipping into like communism, dictatorship type stuff. And I know you have a different, well, you have the same perspective, but I like the fact that you're not from America. So I thought you'd bring a great perspective to the show, but also because I had to have you on because you're my co-host. So, but I like the fact that you can be truly outside of the U.S. unbiased here. So it's going to be interesting to hear your perspective from outsiders looking in, because by the way, there's people all over the world looking in on this right now going, what in the name of what is going on in that country right now?
I think there are a lot of people that are concerned about what's happening in the U.S., both internally and externally.
Yes.
But unfortunately, I know a lot of people, they've kind of given up on following politics.
They have. I feel like people are throwing the towel in, and it's sad.
They're just feeling like I can't control anything. I'd rather just turn a blind eye to it. So I think what's important is to give a little context to the situation, because there's an extra layer to this. You know, America is very much a two-team system, right? You've got your Democrats and your, can't even talk today, your Democrats and your Republicans, right?
Yeah.
And because it's such a two-team system, a lot of people aren't really aware when somebody else comes in and tries to disrupt it, because they just don't really give it a whole lot of credit. And RFK, who's been pushing his candidacy almost exclusively through podcasts, mostly because he's been blocked out of the major media sources.
You got that right.
Actually has significantly more ground attained than maybe any other independent in history. And correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, because you're much more politically inclined in the United States than I am. Who was the closest ever as far as votes gathered as an independent before RFK?
It was Ross Perot, and I don't know if it was the 80s or the 90s. And by the way, he was on the debate stage as a third candidate against, and I can't remember who the candidates were at the time, but nonetheless, he met the polling criteria to get on the stage. And the reason we wanted to shoot the show, sort of a last-minute show, is because if something like this continues and compounds, we're going to start to lose our right to vote for who we want to vote for and who qualifies to be on the ballot. And then all of a sudden, we've lost democracy, and we've also lost what's called free and fair elections, which is democracy, right? Democracy is driven by free and fair elections. There really is no democracy without free and fair elections. So if you don't have free and fair elections, everything else after that is meaningless, because if you can't vote for who you want to and who qualifies to be on the ballot, you start to lose a lot, and you start to lose a lot of freedoms and liberties. And that's why we wanted to do this, because we come back to politics and business the most on the show, because it's a business and a political show. But this particular piece right here is something that I'm passionate about, because I've been a donor to Kennedy's nonprofit organization called Children's Health Defense since 2019. So I'm going 5-6 years now donating. And I also am part of his grassroots finance team for the Kennedy 24 campaign. So I'm very versed. I get on the webinars at times. I've raised some money for them. I promote him very aggressively on my social media. And naturally, we talk about an independent candidacy, Aaron and I, quite a bit here on the show, because we're independent entrepreneurial people who are independent, Aaron. They don't get pulled into the dogma, right? and you and I are like this with fitness too, right? There is no one size fits all with fitness, with medicine, with finance, with politics. But we have this dogma where you're either on the red team or the blue team, and you can't listen to any middle ground. And Kennedy's the first guy that's come in and he's put a stake in the ground that's really in the middle. He's brought both sides together. He has Republicans and Democrats coming over. And as a society right now, I don't know if you know this stat, Aaron, I have a lot of stats here today, is we now have the largest number of registered independent voters in American history at this time. I think the number is over 60%. It's never been over 50.
I didn't know that.
So there's a lot of people there's an independent appetite right now. But
so for those people,
the techniques that are happening right now that brought us to this special edition are what we're going to talk about.
So let's lay the foundation here. If you want to run as an independent, if you want to qualify to run, can you maybe share with the viewers or the listeners what has to happen?
Yeah, so the Republican and the Democrat Party in the U.S. are locked in stone. So all you need to do is be the nominee, the elected nominee to be on the ballot. So Trump is the elected nominee for Republicans, right? We just came off this run of people wanting to be the nominee, and he pretty much wiped everybody out. DeSantis got close for a little while. You and I both would have loved to have seen him be the candidate as an up-and-coming guy who did a great job with Florida. Didn't happen, though, okay? Biden is the incumbent, so naturally nobody's going to run against him, although there were some people who ran against him. And interestingly, Kennedy ran against him, and he was eliminated from the Democrat Party simply for exercising his constitutional right in saying, I want to take on Biden as an incumbent. It's normally frowned upon in politics if somebody has a second term that they want to go for and someone comes in and says, I'd like to compete against you. And that's the problem, right? Like, why shouldn't another Democrat go, you know what? I think I can do a better job than you. We're on the same team, but I'm a better quarterback than you are, and I want to compete against you. Would that, in sports, would the coach ever go, no, you're not going to compete in camp against Drew Bledsoe, Tom Brady, because he's my guy no matter what, and I'm not going to look at you. No coach would do that. They want everybody getting a fair chance in camp, and that's the football analogy.
Put him, in that case, they might put him on the bench, but they wouldn't kick him off the team for wanting to be the starter.
Better yet, they wouldn't change the rules of the Democrat National Committee agenda to make it where he couldn't even go to camp and compete in this example, right? So in the example I gave you, the DNC actually changed the primary policies where they said, if you get on the ballot in New Hampshire, for example, it's a big battleground state. They said, you will never be part of this party again. I mean, mafia type techniques. This is all documented. They didn't just say, we'll compete against you. Sure. If you can compete on policy and you can compete on being a competitor, you wouldn't need to eliminate someone. Elimination comes from dictatorships of Russia and Stalin back in the days and Hitler in the German days. Nobody could compete. They just got jailed or censored. Well, did I just say jailed or censored? Because Kennedy's being censored and Trump is about to be jailed. I'm in America. Did you catch all that?
Yeah, I caught it.
That's eerily close to those things we look to in history and say we could never be. We need to fight and come together to never let democracy slip into totalitarianism or dictatorship. Those were two really, really close techniques. We're talking about the Biden administration has eliminated Kennedy from the Democrat Party. He didn't want to run as an independent, Aaron. He wanted to run as a Democrat and actually take Biden on. He would have absolutely crushed him, but they didn't let him speak. They censored him. They eliminated him. They labeled him. They diminished him, and they made him look like a second-class citizen. And we saw what they did to Trump. Love Trump or hate him. The guy's been in court for falsifying business records and inflating the values of his properties, but yet there's no victims. And now they want jail time. This isn't – I know some people have a hard time listening to that and going, no, that's not true. He's a real evil guy. Even if he is, they weaponize the justice system against their opponent. You can't argue that.
Well, I mean, ever since he
declared he was running?
Ever since he said he was running the first time, it's been this perpetual attack over and over and over again. And I'm not saying he's a good guy. I don't really think he probably is a good guy. But it's that old adage, if you put a cop on somebody's tail for 50 miles, eventually they're going to find a reason to give him a ticket. They've been trying to find a reason to give him a ticket since day one.
They ran on it. I mean, so it's not even you and I having an opinion. It's the DAs in those districts actually ran on it. They said, my campaign, my election is to get Trump. I mean, you have decorated Democrat liberal you know who Alan Dershowitz is? He's probably the most decorated liberal attorney. He was part of the O.J. Simpson campaign. He was part of the team that got him off.
Yeah.
Love him or hate him for doing that. He did his job, and he basically put holes in the evidence and got O.J. off. He's a decorated liberal Democrat lawyer. He's a Harvard scholar, and he absolutely despises Trump. And he wrote a book called Get Trump, and he detailed how they actually weaponized the entire legal system to take Trump out. This is scary, right? This is going to start to leave us in a situation where we don't have choices. But back to Kennedy, right? So they started with the DNC, so he had to flip independent, okay? Now, as an independent, he loses the ability to easily get on a ballot. And this is all about ballot access, right? So as an independent, he isn't grandfathered into the ballots as the nominee. So you know what he has to do? He has to basically go to all the states independently. He has to get a certain amount of signatures to be on the ballot in those states. And then he has to meet a certain polling criteria nationally to get on the ballot and to get on the debate stage. And the dilemma today is that the debate is June 27th. So whenever you're watching this, June 27, 2024, I've labeled it as a turning point in the U.S. And I was afraid of what was to come, which means they wouldn't let him on the stage, even though he's met all the polling criteria. I have the polls here. I'm going to share them in a minute. So he got the signatures, Aaron, and he's on most ballots. And the interesting thing is Biden and Trump aren't on the ballots yet, because you can't technically be on the ballot until you accept the nomination at your convention, and the conventions aren't till July and August, respectively. So they're actually saying he can't compete on the debate stage because A, he hasn't met the polling criteria, even though he has, and B, he's not on the ballot yet, and he's on more ballots than Trump and Biden because Trump and Biden aren't on any ballots yet. So time out, everybody. What just happened right there?
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And if you're like me, you're going, that none of what you just said there makes any sense. How can somebody be kept out when they've qualified? Let's talk about the numbers.
Let's talk about the numbers. Okay.
You've got them in front of you.
Yeah. So RFK met the polling criteria. There is no two ways about it. CNN and MSNBC and the radical left will spin it however they want to. Here they are. I have them in front of me. I'm reading them right now. So here we go. Kennedy has reached or exceeded 15% in 4 of CNN's approved polls, including a poll from CNN itself. Okay. Other qualifying polls in which Kennedy surpassed CNN's threshold are the April Quinnipiac poll and the May Marquette poll, as reported. An April poll from Monmouth University also had Kennedy at 18%. However, CNN excluded that poll. The CNN poll has him at 16%, the Quinnipiac poll has him at 16%, and the Marquette poll has him at 17%. Those are the polls. One of them is CNN's poll. You need to be at 15% criteria to get on the debate stage. He's at 16, 17, 18% respectively on all the polls that they read to determine if you qualify. And then they said he didn't make it because he didn't meet the polling criteria.
So what polling criteria didn't they, like, what are they pointing at that he didn't make?
This is the point. He made them all. Now, he sued them. He's a very talented lawyer, has a huge legal team, and he's won some of the biggest cases in the world, as you know, against Fortune 500 giants like Monsanto for what they did to the environment and glyphosate and Roundup. I mean, nobody's taking on the big companies, big tech, big agriculture, big food, big pharma like he has, and has exposed their fraud. This is fraud in broad daylight. They're basically saying, okay, even though you've met the criteria, we don't think you should be on the stage. Now, what they're using as their mulligan here, so to speak, Aaron, is they're saying, well, you don't have ballot access. You're not on the ballots, really, technically, or you're not on enough ballots. You need to be on enough ballots that equal 270 delegates, which is how you win the presidency across 51 states. Well, guess what? Biden and Trump don't have one ballot. They're not on any ballots because they can't be on ballots until they accept their nomination in July and August, respectively, at their conventions. So how can you tell Kennedy he doesn't have enough ballot access when Trump and Biden are not on the ballot because they can't be until after July? It's June 26th. So we sit here and we're like confused and laughing, and we go, how does this happen in broad daylight? And it is.
Is there any way for him, in your mind, in the next 2 days to get this overturned?
So good question. We're recording this on June 25th. That particular debate is June 27th. And I don't believe they're going to slip him in last minute. This is a very informal, non-regulated debate. And what I mean by that is this isn't really the debates that normally happen. I'm going to tell you what else is going on here, too. There's a different dynamic at play here. So we've never seen a debate happen before the conventions. Why is that? Because I just explained. Because nobody's on the ballot. So normally you would see a debate September, October, November. Like they cram them into the last 3 months, right? And this is after they've accepted their nomination. So let's pretend it was September right now, and Trump has accepted the nomination, and Biden has accepted the nomination, and now they're ready to debate, and now they can because they're on the ballot, right? That's normally how it goes. Here's what's going on the Democrat side, which people aren't seeing as well. My sources that I continue to plug into and that continue to report to me are phenomenal. They're actually testing Biden's cognition right now. So this is an informal debate that isn't playing by the rules by design. They don't want to do a debate after he's nominated because if he can't pull it off, it's too late to pull him out. So what's happening right now is we're sort of having like, you're a fight guy. It's almost like we're doing a heavyweight fight, Aaron, but it's sort of like a dress rehearsal heavyweight fight where the same judges aren't there and it isn't the same rules, but yet we're giving the public a taste. But the real fight would be in September. You get it?
It's like an exhibition or a sparring.
It's like, that's the word I was looking for. So that's why I use fighting terms. So this is like an exhibition, and really the sole goal of the Democrat Party right now is they're scared shitless, which is why they're gaslighting the hell out of the public, is because Biden, without question, can't go another 4 years. He might be able to go another 4 months, but he can't go 4 years. He has early onset dementia. My dad has early onset dementia, and my dad's in a nursing home at 78 years old. And everything that I see, like this was him 2 years ago, the tripping, the falling, the confusion, the slurred words, the having to be directed to go, forgetting the past. I mean, it's sad. It's unfortunate. But don't lie to the public and say that he's cognitively ready and he's never been sharper to compete. What they need to do is they need to assess how he's going to handle himself against Trump for 2 hours unscripted. Now, unscripted is a loose term. He's clearly, they'll cheat. They'll give him the questions 2 days before, but they won't give Trump anything. I mean, let's be real, right? These are the same people who've been lying every time their lips move for the last 3 years, right? They say it's going to be unscripted, and they say there's no teleprompters, and they say you have to go off the cuff and you get your turn to go. If that's true, and if it's the case, and I hope it is, but I don't believe it is, then you're going to see how this guy can go on the fly. And if you're a president and you can't talk on the fly and answer questions on the fly, because right now everything is scripted. Note cards, cue cards, teleprompters, people pulling them off the stage, don't do questions, no Q&A on the fly. Like, this has all been blatant for us to see here in America, Aaron, for the last 2 years. Nothing isn't scripted. Nothing. So unscripted.
But let me pause you there
stage,
for a second and let me ask you a question. Isn't that common for any president? Don't they always have things scripted out for them? That it's
only
not
for the speech. Only for the speech. But when the speech is over, live Q&A is called retail politics, where you get boots on the ground and you answer questions live and you show you're a real person. He's not capable of doing that. He hasn't done that in years. In fact, when that begins, they actually pull him off the stage and make it like he has to go somewhere else. It's obvious at this point. In fact, they found cue cards, just like stupid things. Say yes after this. Don't say no after it's so stupid. I mean, it's like what my 9-year-old daughter would do if she was giving and my son takes a debate class in 7th grade, and this is how they operate with cue cards. They're like little cheat cards. This is the president of the United States. How are you going to debate, or how are you going to have a conversation with Putin or Xi Jinping in China on anything that's war driven or controversial when you're on cue cards in front of like 32 reporters at the White House? This is insane. So, but the point is they're assessing his cognition and his ability to speak, communicate, negotiate, and perform on stage. Now, the concoction of drugs will be enormous. So the concoction of Adderall, testosterone, vitamin, nutraceuticals, I'm hearing is through the roof. They did this for the State of the Union. There was like all kinds of Adderall and, heavy stimulants to get through that 90-second speech. So there will be that element, but you and I both know that's a Band-Aid and a shield. That isn't really who you really are, right? So that's going on now too.
But you didn't answer my question. My question is, do you think that there's anything that can be done in the next 2 days to get RFK back on that stage?
I don't because of the window of time, and they know the window of time was small, which is why it all happened quick, because by the time it got through legal proceedings, there wouldn't be enough time. So he's still suing them. They've actually violated the Constitution by banning him from the debate stage. They're in a lot of trouble, CNN. CNN there's not even a 1% chance that CNN is in any way right. And now they're actually on the hook for election interference, which is a huge charge. So CNN is being charged by the Kennedy campaign for election interference because they kept him off the stage, even though he's met all the criteria, which means they're interfering with the election. Trump has a federal offense against him right now, Aaron, for what they call election interference because he didn't want to seal the election in Georgia or some state. He got crazy at the end when he didn't win, and he was saying all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yes, he did.
Right, but so he has a charge for election interference. CNN is being charged for election interference right now. So I have two answers. So the answer is no on June 27th, but June 27th is only the beginning, not the end. When everybody is sworn in, let's assume it's Trump, let's assume it's Biden, even though I'm going to tell you right now that I think both guys will not be on the ballot. I think we're going to see a lot of chaos. I definitely don't think Biden will be on the ballot. September's debate, Kennedy will absolutely be there because at that point it's a real debate. Everybody will be on the respective ballots, and his polling numbers will probably be over 20% by that point because he'll have another 2 months of going through this. So now all this did was delay the inevitable. Keeping him off the stage and taking a shot at democracy and the choice of the people right now might work. It's not going to work come September, October, November when the real debates begin.
So because you know a lot more about American politics than I do, because as you know, I grew up in Canada. I moved down to the Cayman Islands almost 20 years ago. You know, I study it from abroad because it's important for business to know what's going on in the United States. But again, my concern is that RFK, who we've talked about a lot, is potentially being overlooked by the general public in the United States because he's an independent. And I told you a year ago when we first started talking about this, I said, he's not going to win because he's an independent. The system's too broken in the United States. I said, I hope I'm wrong.
You have a valid point.
I hope I'm wrong, but I believe he won't because the system's broken. What are some of the high points or the policies that he wants to put into play if he gets elected president? What are the issues that he sees that he wants to attack?
I want to tackle first the can he win, or is it just smoke and mirrors and we have to just keep focusing on the two-party system? Like I said in the beginning, statistically, there's a stat in his favor, which is that, well, there's two stats. Stat number one is the fact that we now have more independent voters than we've ever had in American history. So if you're an independent voter,
that's interesting.
Yeah, you're looking at who's my independent option. Okay, it's Kennedy. Fine. Okay. The second one is you now have, Aaron, I don't know if you know this, Biden and Trump respectively have the lowest approval ratings in their own parties than any two guys. Well, I shouldn't say in their own parties because Trump has a high approval rating in his own party. Biden has a low approval rating in his own party, has a really low approval rating nationwide. But together as candidates competing against each other, the two of them as the options collectively have the lowest approval interest rating of all. So the point is America, like 30% of America wants to see this debate, but 70% plus, Aaron, does not want to see a Trump and Biden rematch. So that's a really big number. Now we go to phase three, which means Biden most likely is out cognitively. I'm hearing right now that Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton is surfacing again. An outside chance that the communist dictator running California could come into the mix. Newsom, they like him, but then he'd have to run on California, and that would be like a disaster running on that state. There's literally no win. So there's names getting thrown in. And my sources tell me with 95% accuracy that Michelle Obama could be inserted at the convention in August as the so-called savior candidate that would get parachuted in. And the reason that they would wait is because then she wouldn't have to campaign. It's like 2 months until the election at that point.
Right.
And it's also, she's an Obama last name. People would feel comfortable. Oh, well, she's got her husband behind her. What could go wrong?
She'd get the female vote. She'd get the African American vote.
It could be a landslide.
She'd get the whole party vote. Like she would come out like a rocket ship.
So here's why I think Kennedy will continue to soar in the polls and be a viable candidate, because people are now starting to hear him more and realize that he's in the game for the long run. That's now happening. Secondly, if Biden's out, now there's chaos in the Democrat Party. They are going to try to put Trump in jail on July 11th. They're not done with the term convicted felon. That was for their marketing. Okay, that was step one. Step two is, can we get this guy in an orange jumpsuit on July 11th, Aaron, and maybe have him taken out, by the way, 2 days before the Republican convention? Minor detail on the dates. That was by design. So imagine what would happen if Trump can't go to the convention? What would happen? Then he can't accept the nominee. If he can't accept the nominee, can he be on the ballot? Nope.
I don't think so, Kenny.
Nope, because here we go back to the ballot, right? So my thought is they're going to try to put him in jail so he can't be the nominee. And my thought is Biden will be out cognitively. They'll just say, hey, we're going to bring in younger blood. It looks like, you can't perform. We still love you. You did an amazing job 4 years, even though you broke the country in half. Yeah. Great. You can advise us. Done deal. So now that is chaos on both parties. So that's when I think Kennedy becomes even more of a groundswell, when America goes, we just watched both parties break in half 4 months before the election. Kennedy has been running steady, consistent. He's uniting. He's clear. He's really running on a very interesting, I had a debate with somebody online the other day. He's running on a very interesting conservative, old school liberal independent platform, to answer your first question here, your last question, which I'll get to. That's a beautiful blend of old school America. And I think that that's going to start surfacing more as these two start maybe dropping out or falling out or getting pushed out. So now all of a sudden he might have an in where you go, is Kennedy my last choice? This is my bold prediction, is that he might be the last guy standing.
Could there be a repeat of, well, we can't vote for Hillary, and since the only other option is Trump, we're going to vote Trump or not vote at all, which is actually a vote for Trump.
They wouldn't put Hillary as the president. They would most likely put her as the vice president because she's white and Michelle Obama's black, and it's all they have no party without racism. So they have to basically put the white person behind, and they have to promote racism, and they have to promote white man bad. And I mean, it's very sad. It's unfortunate. This is what they run on, the divide and conquer racial game. They don't have a party and they don't have a platform without illegal migration and racism. It's very sad. It's very sad. I pulled the statistics last week, Aaron, on that, and they literally have, like, their constituency is like 10% if they don't run on those issues.
Well, the point that I'm trying to make is in the last election.
Yep.
So many people didn't want to vote for Hillary.
Right.
That they either voted for Trump or they didn't vote at all, which was actually inadvertently a vote for Trump. Could we be seeing a similar situation come where both parties are so fractured that there's a vote for RFK?
Well, yeah, because listen, I was one of those people in the last election. I didn't vote for Trump or Biden. I was burnt with the whole thing. I didn't really look at politics or care about politics, as you know, Aaron, until COVID. Yep. And I realized COVID was the biggest political shit show in the world. And now I needed to really, really learn, how does politics now play into health and war and the environment and everything that's going to climate. All of it's just political propaganda, right? It's all funding. So that's when I was like, okay, if Kennedy got into this game, he's really been on that soapbox for a lot of years. Less government, right? More choice, right? Choice across the board, medical freedom, full transparency, eliminating this weird relationship between government and corporations, right? Crony capitalism is something he stood firmly against. Free speech absolutist, right? Not censorship. All the things we've seen in the last 3 years are all the things the old school Democrat Party stood for. Kennedy, Clinton, Bill Clinton. I have a speech from Bill Clinton I posted on my social media platform. It's about illegal migration. Aaron, we talked about this on one of our shows. Bill Clinton speaking to the entire House of Representatives on how awful it is for America that we would ever, and his words were illegal aliens. Bill Clinton in the 90s, about how bad that is because it depresses American workers' wages and it's not safe and it puts America last. Standing ovation from both Republicans and Democrats in the House in 1998. That speech today was given by Trump or DeSantis or RFK. They would censor, invalidate, label, name call, and maybe even have the Justice Department go and arrest you if you said that. That's today. This is scary, right? So he's running on a platform where he's running on good old-fashioned American principles, where there's a little bit of liberalism, because Kennedy liberalism was good for America. It was, hey, we want to see transparency. We want to hold government accountable. We want to hold pharma accountable. We want to hold big ag accountable, right? Old school liberalism, they wanted for the people first, government second. Today's liberalism wants government first, people second, and it's more of a socialist communist party today than it was back then. He's not part of that cabal. He's maintained the principles of the John F. Kennedy liberal Democrat Party and even the Bill Clinton liberal Democrat Party. But those are all conservative policies today. So now some people go, well, you're a crazy conservative. And he goes, well, actually, no, I'm running on the principles my uncle ran on, and he was the most loved president in history. And because I used to be a Democrat, you now call me conservative, but yet I'm running on the Democrat principles from back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s. And I'm just bringing it all to the center. But he's pro-choice, not pro-life, so that's a conservative thing. They're pro-life. Liberals are pro-choice, right? So he's pretty much right down the middle, but probably more conservative, which is sanity today. Conservatism today is more sanity. Liberalism has gone off the deep end. I mean, they actually think a 16-year-old kid can cut off his genitals and become a girl. I mean, there's their credibility, right? He doesn't believe in any of that. That's complete insanity. So he's brought this thing to the middle, which is why he's gaining so much steam. And when you listen to a long form interview, you go, man, he's tough not to like. And he's tough not to like to have an office because he's really not alienating anyone. He's really trying to bring everyone together. And he's really talking intelligent, grassroots, down-to-earth policies.
Well, and the interesting thing is that 2 of his family members were killed.
I know.
In this industry. I mean, let's call it what it is. It's an industry.
Yeah, you're right.
Right? And so he knows that even by sticking his head out, he makes himself a target by the media and anything attached to the big system. And he's had a couple interviews I've watched him where he said, yeah, like I could be taken out just like my family members were. I'm aware of it. It's just, I want to see America come back to its foundations and come back to its roots. And for those people who are unaware of what this guy did for the last 20 years, before he decided to go out and spend a ton of his own money trying to upset the apple cart, trying to get on these ballots. What did his career look like? Because I know you studied him a lot.
Yeah. First thing I want to mention, I'm glad you brought up his dad and his uncle thing, because I almost forgot. I'm looking at my notes over here. He was denied Secret Service protection by the Biden administration since last summer. You can't get Secret Service protection until you're at least 15% polling. And again, back to our 15% polling thing. He met that criteria a long time ago. So the media will say, oh, no, he doesn't qualify for Secret Service protection. He never met the criteria. He's also sued the White House for Secret Service. You're dealing with a talented lawyer here. So when you try to play like the little games, the little gaslighting games, you're just going to get sued. I mean, he's one of the biggest lawsuits in the world. They denied him Secret Service protection, Aaron, even though he met the criteria. But here's the real weird thing, to your point. This is a Kennedy. His dad was assassinated. His uncle was assassinated. He's had death threats. He's a real candidate. He was one of you. He respectfully, in a written formal letter, following all the guidelines, asked for Secret Service protection on 3 occasions, and they denied it, which means they said, it's okay that your life is in jeopardy. We're fine with that. We don't care. This is not, these are the people who get on TV every day and say, man, if this Trump guy gets in office, we're going to lose our democracy real quick. You're the one that just denied Secret Service protection to a polling candidate. You denied him being in your party. You also denied him being on the stage, and you just opened our border, and you're allowing basically 10 million illegal voters into the country, and you're preaching about democracy. I mean, could they project themselves onto the public any worse than that and gaslight good, hardworking American people any worse than they're gaslighting them right now? I mean, this is insane. So back to but go ahead.
Anytime I see things like this, anytime I see traditions or laws being overturned,
there you go,
to keep somebody out,
or to keep someone in power, Aaron,
or to keep someone in power, like
right.
Depending on how you want to view it.
Both, right?
We're not going to give you Secret Service protection even though you qualify. We're not going to let you into a debate even though you qualify. Right. We're not going to let you on mainstream media even though you're a legitimate candidate. I remember seeing Ross Perot in his interviews. He got interviews on mainstream media.
Absolutely, he did.
So now he's got to go real grassroots podcast. I think it's been really smart, his podcast attack. I think it's been well played.
It has, yeah.
Anytime I see somebody that is suppressed like that, I always ask myself the same question, which is, what are they afraid of?
That's exactly right. It's not what, listen, it's never been the government's job to protect you and me from what somebody's opinion is, right? And that's the game they play. Well, we need to censor him because it wouldn't be good if that information got into your ears. Could that be any more patronizing and disrespectful to the American people paying taxes in a democracy for them to basically be saying, oh, no, that's misinformation. We're going to remove it from the web because we don't think that you can handle it. I couldn't think of a bigger slap on the face than government deciding for me what they think is mis or disinformation. Now, there's a new term, Aaron, called malinformation. They create their own language every single day. Malinformation was a term created specifically for Robert F. Kennedy. Do you know what malinformation means?
No idea.
Malinformation is a term created by the crooked White House because they make up new terms every single week. This is part of the business model. Malinformation means everything you're saying is true, but it would be really dangerous if it got out. Malinformation. That's the new one.
But here's the question that comes up, okay?
What is happening?
First off, you're making up new words. Secondly,
you're creating language. Which,
Think
by
about
the
this
way,
from
is
a
by the way,
logical-
Aaron, before you say that, the changing of language is like pillar number 1 in the Communist Handbook. Changing language to just confuse and gaslight. Go ahead, though.
So I'm going to step back because I'm not a super political guy, right? I'm just one of those guys that looks at things and asks what I think are logical questions. Let's just assume, okay, for a moment, that R. Kelly decided he was going to run for president. Okay,
The singer?
Are you familiar with R. Kelly?
R. Kelly, the singer?
Yeah, the singer that was absolutely hammered in the courts, so, for being a pedophile and everything else last year.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, if R. Kelly decides I'm going to run for president and somehow gets a whole bunch of support and people who want to vote for them, and the system turns around and says, "You're a bad person. We don't want you on this debate stage." First off, if the public wants it, they should still let them. But I could kind of understand, this is a sideshow. This is a circus. This is ridiculous, right? This is not him. This is a Kennedy. This is a Kennedy.
Exactly.
Okay? You can't name me a more established, likely more respected lineage in American politics than the Kennedys. How are we not letting a Kennedy onto the same debate stages and media channels as a guy with dementia and a guy that's in court half the time?
I'm going to tell you, and it's a great, you're saying it as if it's the most insane, asinine thing ever. We're laughing, but it's not funny because this is how bad it is. And anybody that still supports this White House at this point is either playing politics or they're really, really, really brainwashed, but those are the only two choices. And that needs to be looked at. Here's why. Kennedy, back in the early 2000s, was basically, this is a great story. And this is how it all began, Aaron. Okay. Kennedy was basically, I don't want to use the term bullied. I want to use the term persuaded. Kennedy was persuaded by thousands of moms across the United States who continued over time to have their kids were just continuously being injured. They had autism. They had mercury poisoning. They were getting cancers. They were getting autoimmune diseases. And they kept saying, Robert F. Kennedy, you're a Kennedy. You've always fought big corporations. You went after Monsanto. You won. You went after these guys for causing cancer in different foods. You won. You went after big agriculture because of what they did to our soil. You won. You've been protecting the environment. You saved the Hudson River in New York from polluters. You have been basically doing work for the people and work for the environment for 40 plus years, and you're a talented lawyer. Then one day, the mothers came and they said, we firmly believe our kids are vaccine injured. We firmly believe that our kids have been poisoned. They brought to his house, they surrounded him. They basically picketed him, Aaron, to say, please look at the data. We've been doing this for years. We've been collecting data for years. We truly believe that the metals and the mercuries and the toxicity in vaccines are damaging the brains of kids. He's like, I'm not getting involved in this game. I'm too busy. I'm fighting Monsanto. I'm fighting DuPont. They made a movie called Dark Waters. It's on Netflix. Great movie about the DuPont story where DuPont leaked all their chemicals into the rivers of Pennsylvania and there was mass cancer cases. Kennedy won that case. That movie's about Kennedy. Kennedy has been saving people in the environment and putting people first, just like his dad and his uncle, for decades. He said, I don't want to be in this fight. I can't look at this. I can't be in another fight. But they just kept going and going and going and going. He said, fine, I'll look at the information. Guy spends one night till 4 a.m. This is all in his book, by the way, reading the data, going through the reports from the moms, and he goes, oh my God, good grace of God, I could never look the other way on this. This is an absolute mass poisoning of the environment, of the population. So now he goes into that arena and he goes, okay, I have contacts at CDC, FDA, NIH. I know everybody. I know Fauci on a first name basis. I could text him, call him. I need to know why there's no triple-blind placebo studies ever done on vaccines. And I also need to know why every vaccine manufacturer has full immunity by the government, which means they can't be sued. But yet this is the only medicine on the planet that's given full immunity. You know what that means, right, Aaron? Full immunity, right?
I think you should explain it.
They could never be sued. Vaccine manufacturers can never be sued for damages. So he goes, why is this the case? Why do they have full immunity? Why have there never been triple-blind placebo studies on and every other medicine has had triple-blind placebo studies. Why has this one medicine had these two characteristics that no other medicine has had? No triple-blind placebo studies, and why are they fully immune from lawsuits if there's any damages, which means they've gone rogue? He then finds out that there's an aggressive form of mercury in the early vaccines that he's linked to autism. He never said they cause autism. He said that there's disturbing links to autism, and simply what he did was he pulled the reports and he said, okay, when this vaccine schedule started here in the 90s, and then we take it to 2014, don't quote me on the numbers, there was a 20-year, 15-year range. The autism numbers, Aaron, are a straight line up without even a hesitation from the window where the vaccine schedule went from like 14 a year to like 72 a year. It was insane. It was all of a sudden the vaccine. And I'm so thankful that me as a 50-year-old and even my kids, me as a 15-year-old, my kids are all vaccinated up until a certain point. Clearly never the COVID-19 because that isn't a vaccine, but like the general ones for polio and those, they got those. But when that schedule tripled, autism went straight through the roof. Now, what he did is he brought this information to the public. And he said, I'm noticing disturbing scenarios here. Full immunity, no triple-blind studies, and autism is through the roof, and autoimmune diseases are through the roof. And now we're seeing chronic disease crisis in that demographic that we've never seen in history. It's something like 60% of people have chronic disease crisis in the last 10 or 15 years. It was like 2% or 10% when John F. Kennedy was in office in the 60s. And all he did was he said, I want to have this looked at. I want to see real science on this. I want to see data on this. That, Aaron, right there was it. When he went for Big Pharma, and he specifically went for the niche within Big Pharma, which is vaccines, he was completely removed from the conversation. He was immediately labeled a conspiracy theorist. They took all of his articles offline. He then went and built a nonprofit organization called Children's Health Defense, where all of their research was now put out and published, and is now readily available for all to see. Never said this is what's happening. He said, I want better science, and I want to see what's causing this massive spike in autism and these massive chronic disease spikes, and also these turbo cancers and all of these issues we've never seen. But we saw them when the vaccine schedule went from about 10 or 15 a year to 72 a year. And he's been on that soapbox for a little while right now. And he's basically wrote books about it. In fact, there's one book here called Vax versus Unvaxxed. He's actually pulled data from every country in the world for the last 50 years. And there's not one country that has more vaccinated than unvaccinated that performs better in any health outcome than the ones who are unvaccinated. So when they say vaccines save lives, maybe they do, but the collateral damage as a result is actually causing more damage than societies that are less vaccinated than more vaccinated. When you go against the vaccine industry, Aaron, you are going against the greatest mafia cabal potentially in human history, and that's why he's been so diminished, because they drive the economy. They drive the world. Pharma funds all of these media sources. Pharma is the driver. So do you see why people go, how could it be, to your point, Aaron? How could a Kennedy be so diminished in this game? Wouldn't he be the likely choice? No, because he's the guy that called for full transparency of the most profitable mafia-driven industry maybe in mankind. And you're going against an 800-pound gorilla at this point. Now, interestingly,
I watched an interview with him, and I think he said that something like 59% of all mainstream television commercial revenue, you might know that number better than me, is actually Big Pharma. And he was saying that there's only 2 countries in the world that actually allow pharmaceuticals to be marketed on mainstream television, the United States, and maybe it's New Zealand. I can't remember the other one. But I think I remember him saying one of the first things he was going to do when he got into office was ban Big Pharma from mainstream television.
Yeah, first executive order he said is we're going to ban pharmaceutical advertising on television because we're the only country in the world that allows it. And New Zealand does too, but they have more regulation than we do. So that's number one. But here's the other thing. They're actually pushing Trump and Kennedy right now. People who really understand what's going on with this whole vaccine pharmaceutical thing that I just explained here, they said for pandemics to end and gain of function research to end and this nonstop fear porn with viruses to end is as soon as you pull the plug on all vaccine manufacturers get full immunity, you're suddenly going to see almost nobody creating vaccines for coronaviruses. They're creating them at scale, Aaron, because they're immune from lawsuits. So they can go rogue, and they're not required to do triple-blind placebo studies, to my point earlier. So they're saying to Trump that the Biden administration would never do that because they're fully owned by the vaccine industry, right? So they're saying to Trump and Biden, Kennedy already knows. They're saying to Trump and Kennedy, the first thing you need to do is remove the immunity clause. They shouldn't get immunity. If somebody gets injured, they're on the hook. They made shitty medicine, just like every other medicine in the world. If I go take this pill over here tomorrow, I don't know, let's call it Propecia for my hair or something, or let's call it, I don't know, something, a statin for blood pressure. If I go take that tomorrow, Aaron, and I have a bad outcome, I get to sue them. That's how the world works, but not vaccines. So when he took on the vaccine industry, they absolutely chastised him. So now he's playing from behind. You get it now? You see why a Kennedy? So it wouldn't have mattered if it was a Kennedy. It wouldn't have mattered really who it was. They're now basically, that's the game that's being played right now, is they're trying to, is they don't want him to come to surface with that information. I mean, he's exposing 30 years of corruption here, and all he's doing is asking questions. He's not saying this is what you did. He's saying, show us the data. All he's saying, I want better science. Can you show me better science? Can we do better science? And can we remove you from immunity so that we know that what our kids are putting in their bodies is safe and effective? Can you imagine that that's extreme today? That's where we're at. That's why he's been banned.
And I think I'll leave it with this last point today, which is we often say, follow the money.
Yeah.
So CNN is hosting the debate. We now know that somewhere between 50 and 70% of commercials revenue on TV is driven by Big Pharma. And JFK or RFK is against Big Pharma and saying, I'm going to remove Big Pharma from television. See how that just looped around and round and round, and now you can kind of put the pieces together.
Hit the nail on the. I brought it full circle in closing here. We're going to keep this kind of short, but you're absolutely right. They're jokingly saying in the Kennedy camp that this will be the debate the debate that is sponsored by Pfizer. This debate brought to you by Pfizer, right? So to bring it all full circle, everybody, this was just a quick special one that we wanted to do here and stick this in. We went off path from our normal topics, but this is political, so it's not totally off topic. But we're looking at an environment that we've never seen before. It would be the best thing that could happen for America, in closing here, that we had 3 candidates that got to compete head to head with no censorship. Doesn't matter what they feel. You're a big boy, I'm a big boy, you're a big girl, you're big boys, big girls. Whatever they feel, whatever they think, whoever they want to throw stones at, you should let them throw them, and you should let everyone defend themselves, and the winner will rise to the crop, just like it is in business, just like it is in sports. We don't need to have our information curated by the government, and that's what's happening right now. That's extremely scary. So this will always come back to affecting your day-to-day life. It's going to affect your family life. And it's going to affect your business life if these choices are stripped from you. And that's really what we wanted to bring to the table here today, is now you've got a 45-minute glimpse of what's really going on and why a candidate who is as viable and as intelligent as ever. And as I like to say in closing, Aaron, Kennedy is playing chess while Trump is playing checkers and while Biden is playing tic-tac-toe. That's where we're at with the 3 in the race. But we should be able to see the 3 in the race, and we should be able to hear everything they say, and they should go head-to-head right until the bell goes off, right?
I agree.
So anyway, so you got some context there, folks. We'll be back same time, same spot here. Hopefully you're enjoying the new the rebrand of the show. But we're talking, Aaron, next time, peak performance secrets for people over 45 years old. It's one of our favorite topics. That'll be the next one. But I hope you enjoyed this special issue on Kennedy, the independent candidate. Is this the end of free and fair elections? That's the question. I hope not. Aaron, I know you hope not. I appreciate your outside of America perspective here today. That's Aaron. I'm Andrew. This one's a wrap. We'll see you next time.